Welcome to the Fantasy Draft Weekly Rundown. Joining me as always is co-host and NFL Ironman London Fletcher. London, what do you think of Thursday night football? Let me ask you a few questions about it. First of all, did you like playing in Thursday night football?
I like it depends on at what point in the season. As you get later in the year, obviously your body is a little bit more banged up, and it takes a lot longer to recover. With that short window, I didn't particularly care for it. However, on the flip side, once the game was over, I enjoyed that extra rest that you got. From you got basically 10 days rest. So it's one of those, I guess, double-sided coins, so to speak.
So do you think they should continue playing Thursday night football?
You know what? It's one of those things where they're going to continue doing it. It generates interest. It generates money. People are tuning in and watching the games. So it's just one of those things where players just have to deal with it, basically, because it's going to be a part of the NFL moving forward, and it's something where I wouldn't even spend a whole lot of time complaining about it because nothing's going to happen.
Well, here's what I was alluding to. The matchup this week is the Titans and the Jaguars, which is it's kind of brutal unless you like, a matchup of young quarterbacks who are kind of up and
Right.
coming. Do you think for fantasy purposes, if you're playing the Thursday night slate, that there's anyone to use from it? I mean, I'm looking at it, maybe Julius Thomas. Is there anyone else I'm missing?
I love the two wide receivers for Jacksonville and Blake Bortles. Those guys have I won't even say quietly had a very, really productive season, but look at the two guys, Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson. Hurns, I think he's had at least seven touchdowns in the last 7 games, or I'm sorry, a touchdown in the last 7 ball games. So that's something to be tuning in and looking and see what happens with that. Robinson is a young, up and coming, promising receiver, and Blake Bortles, man, he's starting to look pretty good as well. And then you have the Mariota factor on the other side for the Titans. So he's a young, up and coming quarterback who's playing pretty good football.
Yeah, and there's an offense where both the receivers are legitimate. Bortles is safely supporting both of them. And let's get to the picks because I'm going to start.
Also the Delaney Walker, the tight end for the Titans.
There you go.
He's another guy to keep an eye on.
Yeah, he's the king of the tip passes too. I don't remember. I don't know if you saw that a few weeks ago where he caught. I think it was at least two. He might have even caught three, but one of them was a long touchdown that was basically the tip drill. It popped up in the air. It was a horrible pass, and he ran it for a touchdown. So Delaney Walker, king of the tip pass. So even if
Wow.
they defend it, maybe he can score. But like I was saying, let's go to another offense. Let's start with the picks this week. You mentioned Blake Bortles with Allen Hurns and Allen Robinson, who are both legit. I actually think that Derek Carr is supporting two very legit wide receivers this season. Kind of surprisingly, I mean he was a high draft pick, but I don't think any of us expected him to be this good. And he
Right.
gets a matchup this week against the Lions, who are allowing the third most fantasy points to quarterbacks. He has at least 22 fantasy points in four straight, and two of those were 30 plus. I don't know about you, but looking at Lions Raiders, I think this is going to be a shootout. I mean, they're playing in a dome. Vegas has them projected at 24.8 points, which is seventh most this week. So obviously they like him. He's not really priced as a top quarterback, so you don't have to worry about paying up for a guy, who's going to score a lot of points. I think at a mid-tier price, which I don't usually do at quarterback, I'm going Carr this week. Who do you like?
You know, I like Carson Palmer, and we look at what he did on against the Arizona Cardinals. I'm sorry, against the Seattle Seahawks. You know, very impressive, man. Throwing for over 300 yards and well, actually 363 yards, 3 touchdowns against the Legion of Boom at Seattle. I mean, that's impressive, man. To be able to go against that secondary and do what he did, and he didn't shy away from anybody. They went at Richard Sherman a ton. You look at Carson Palmer. I like him. This week, he's a for me. He's definitely in my MVP candidates.
Yeah, and I think this week it's pretty easy to fit kind of a more expensive quarterback because there are such good options at the other positions that are not expensive. Let's go to Charkandrick West, who who pretty much succeeded in a very difficult matchup last week. I mean, against the Broncos, who are basically football's number one defense. If not, they're certainly in the conversation. He's now going to face the most favorable matchup of any running back, which is the San Diego Chargers. Between them and the Broncos, or excuse me, them and
They're
the
more favorable than the Cleveland Browns.
yeah, it's them and the Browns basically. They've been kind of teetering back and forth, but the point is, Charkandrick West $8,800. I mean, if you're looking for a top back, 15,000 is what it's going to cost you. So he's approximately half. And this is a guy who's carried the ball at least 20 times in three straight. He caught a receiving touchdown last week. That was a long one. So he's adding to the passing game. So this is a workhorse back. I think this is just a straight price oversight, and you can't ignore Charkandrick West this week because of the price. Who do you like?
You know, I like the Tavius Murray. You know, going against the Detroit Lions. You mentioned the Detroit Lions and the problems that they have. You know, not only defending the pass, but also they've had trouble defending the run. Murray he struggled a little bit. You know, in his last ball game against the Minnesota, he was coming back from a concussion suffered against the Pittsburgh Steelers. But prior to that, he had been really running the football well. Went for over 113 yards. Went for 113 against the Jets. Almost 100 against the Steelers. One thing that I did like against the Minnesota Vikings, he caught 5 receptions. So 5 passes, and that's big in our PPR league. So I like Murray as a running back, and also Danny Woodhead. You know, a guy who I think he'll catch a lot of passes. I mean, we know how important the PPR is and receptions are at the running back position. So Woodhead and Murray are two of the guys that I like.
Yeah, and kind of what I've noticed is in the past few weeks, there have been anomalies where quarterbacks throwing to backs for long
Mhm.
touchdowns, such as Cutler to Langford,
I
and we saw
know, man.
Kendrick West. So you almost could start a quarterback and a running back, even though it doesn't seem to make a whole lot of sense. It happens, and that can win you tournaments on fantasy draft.
Man, if you could have saw me screaming at the television when the St. Louis Rams just rushed up the field, oblivious to the screen, their defense. I'm like, man, it's a screen. Stop. Turn around from a defensive lineman standpoint. I was beside myself. Needless to say.
So we are on the Raiders. Stay tuned for our upcoming segments on wide receiver, tight end, defense, and the questions. And I'm going to start off with even some more Raiders. So stay tuned.